Hey everyone, this is Jack from the Cardboard Herald, and today we are going over my first impressions of Intrepid, the new cooperative game by Uproarious Games. It's set in a realistic setting where the players are astronauts on the International Space Station trying to complete missions while also surviving as the ship's environmental systems are constantly going out of whack, and you need to make sure that you have the oxygen, power, nutrition, and climate for you to sustain from turn to turn and complete these three objectives that are also going to be sinks essentially for those four resources, which are the primary things that you're manipulating throughout the game, and sustaining yourself as disasters go abound that throw everything awry. So what do I like about this game? Well, let me talk to you about the asymmetric powers. I really like that the game, it doesn't really have you have asymmetric powers in the traditional sense. It's almost like an asymmetric detriment. You have a loadout of dice that you're going to be rolling on your turn, and that pool of dice you're going to be like, yum, 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 yum. I want to assign this to all the different worker locations on the board, but each of the different nationalities with representation, each of the different characters that you can play as has their own puzzle that you have to overcome in order to even utilize your dice. So you have your supply of dice, which is like the out-of-game pool that you might be able to access with game effects. And then when you roll, certain dice are going to be put into storage, which is like a holding cell unique to your player power. And then as you manipulate or move around your dice or interact with different locations, you're going to get access to some of those dice that you reserved in your storage so that they can be used for other in-game effects. And that's really cool. Like, it does give each character their own flavor and feel, but it's not like you're getting some super boon or leg up over everyone else. It's actually your own puzzly detriment that you have to contend with. Though also all the different characters come with their own loadout of worker locations that are going to give you a different feel from game to game to game. It's a really nice way of giving a lot of variety to the game. It gives you more tension as you try to overcome each character's puzzle, and it creates really cool intersections between players because some characters may have a harder or easier time getting access to certain pip numbers on their dice, and there is a transferal mechanic that you can utilize one of your dice to grant another player a dice of the same or a modified amount, which is cool. That encourages cooperation and overcoming your unique challenges. Another thing that I absolutely love that I want to see in more games is the staggered mission system. Every game you're going to have to play through 3 missions, which those missions, once you initiate them, then they are going to be a sink for the different resources. You know, it might be a lot of cost as far as oxygen on top of the already costly requirements in order to keep all the human beings alive on the spaceship. But for that mission, initially it's going to be a little bit of a cost, and then the next turn it's going to be a lot of cost, and then a lot of cost, and then a final near insurmountable amount that you're going to have to overcome until that mission is completed. What makes it cool is that you can run these missions in parallel. When you initiate the first mission, the next one flips up, and you could initiate that at the same time, or you could stagger them a bit. It's a really cool idea and gives you a really potent sense of agency in the flow and pace of the game, which is something that a lot of cooperative games desperately need. Speaking of resources, your 4 primary environmental resources, there's a really cool sliding scale associated with those. Now, one of the things about the game, if you sat down with the game, the first eye-catching thing would be this bonkers wheel that spins, and there's a clear window on the front of every one of the player boards that you could see all of these sliding resources. I'll get into that a little bit more in a bit, but the fundamental concept of a sliding scale of resources, of like an ongoing sink of how much you are in the red at the beginning of every round that you have to overcome in order to produce a certain amount, and you can pay as different actions or game effects, not just the amount of resources that you currently have, but you can actually put yourself more in the consistent negative in this sink, the fundamental requirements that you're going to have to produce every turn, which gives, again, this sense that you could really get a leg up on certain things, but it's going to maybe bite you in the butt as the game goes on, because ultimately you're going to have to overcome that new, deeper negative that you put yourself into, which again plays into that sense of agency that I really like about this game. And ultimately, one of the best things I can say about this game is that even though it is pretty heady, aside from the disaster cards that are going to flip up, you can see what all of the potential is every round. But nonetheless, the game manages to deliver it in a way that makes it feel cohesive and interconnected, and like you have a sense of tension as the game goes on. You don't get lost in the algebra, the crunching, so to speak. Now, as far as what I didn't like, let's talk about those production values. I get it. They were like, yo, let's make a Kickstarter. Let's make it have everything. We're going to have such a lavish board, and it's going to take up a ton of space, and we're going to have all the player boards with these crazy wheels that sound really cool, but ultimately it feels overwrought and gimmicky to me. Like, honestly, I feel like this game could have had components that were like, I don't know, 60% of the size that ultimately they went with. The plastic windows on the player boards look a little bit garish. And yeah, I know you can slide the wheel and everything, but even just touching the board slid the wheel a little bit. Whereas a nice, elegantly put together dual layered player board with slots, and you could move a token to represent how much in the negative you are, and that's adjustable, and you still have the token for current values and maximum values and that kind of stuff, I think would have worked just as fine, but they didn't. And so what we're left with is something that feels gimmicky and overwrought. Also, even though the game gives you a clear objective, or rather 3 missions as the objectives and survivability as objectives, I never felt like I was really committed to a theme. Yes, the theme was there. Yes, they have good illustrations. Yes, they try to bake that into as much as possible. But I've played a lot of Euro games in which it was essentially spreadsheets the game, but they managed to sell the theme. And I never really felt that connectivity here. Ultimately, I was trying to hit numbers, and it could have been anything. I think it's because all of the worker placement locations were just so abstracted out. There was never any thematic immersion that I was feeling in any of that. And as such, that really fresh theme was kind of lost on this game, or it wasn't as well integrated as I would have liked. And the last thing that didn't work for me is the rules did not feel clear. The rulebook itself, both me and my buddy had to sit down and read it again a couple times, and we also had it up on electronic devices as we were playing it. Ultimately, we did feel confident about everything. It's not like there was anything missing from the rulebook, and it's not like the rulebook had anything that was directly wrong. It's just the flow was more impenetrable than most board games that I play, in spite of it looking like something that was clearly delivering information. It just wasn't doing it in a way that I felt was particularly successful, and I learned a lot of games. So overall, I really like this game. My biggest frustrations were that there were certain things that just weren't as polished as I would have liked. Yeah, I would have liked a better rulebook. I would have liked better integration of theme. But ultimately, the things that it does feels very fresh. It feels very cohesive. It has a good ecosystem where there's interconnectivity between everything. And even though the theme wasn't really baked into it in a way that it resonated with me, I still really like having real-world themes as an alternative to so many of other board game themes that are so commonly used. So if you're looking for a cooperative game, if you're looking for a real world scientific theme, if you're looking for something that really has some interesting ideas as far as staggering objectives or giving you a lot of agency in the game, then I highly recommend you check it out. I know I certainly plan to play more myself. And that's it. That is our review. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald.